Welcome to Green Housing, a Smart Business Strategy, a webinar organized by Construction Week and IFC, a World Bank group. While we'll discuss about how green housing encompasses the entire gamut of housing today, we also have some esteemed members who are part of the green housing on our panel today. A little bit about Construction Week. We are a magazine that are 12 years old in India. We are a Dubai-based company, and we have, to our credit, several prestigious awards and events that we organize every year. Besides that, we have other magazines in our genre, which is Hoteler India, Architect and Interiors, Manufacturing Today, Healthcare Radius, Commercial Design, and Digital Studio. So that is one across each sector. I will introduce you to the panelists today. So we have Ashwindra Singh, who's responsible for strengthening. He's the CEO of Residential for Bharti Realty. He's responsible for strengthening the residential assets and sales, which includes the premium and luxury residences, Nico Homes, and Leela Residencies. He has an illustrious career of 23 years and has taken up leadership roles and helped businesses grow, including JLL India and Anarok. In his early years, he worked with financial entities, including Citibank, ICICI Bank, and Deutsche Bank in India and abroad. He's also author of the book, A to Z of Residential Real Estate, which has been very well received in the industry. Varun Pal Chaudhary, COO at Ashoka Bilcon, is an architect by qualification from School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi, and holds an MBA in International Business from Faculty of Management Studies, FMS. He brings in more than 30 years of experience in varied fields: strategy planning and policy making, design architecture, project management, and construction. He was former director, Design Will Shakurji Palanji and Company for Mumbai, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Maldives, and Lakshadweep. He has handled complex projects in diverse geographies like India, USA, Europe, Africa, and Middle East nations. Ravi Agarwal is the co-founder and MD of Signature Global. He's a chartered accountant by qualification and a postgraduate in business management, specializing in sales, marketing, and finance. Ravi is the co-founder and MD of Signature Global Group since 2013 and takes care of the finance, fundraising, legal, and overall business development domains. Sanjay Joshi is the additional senior general manager HDFC, and he holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and has been associated with the corporation since 1985, mainly in housing and real estate. He has done an advanced program in housing finance systems from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, US. He's in charge of retail technical functions and also heading HDFC team for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the CLS vertical. In addition, he is part of the HDFC core team for promoting affordable and green housing in India. He is a member of the National Housing Bank Residex Committee for monitoring real estate prices and house price index in India. Atif Syed, South Asia lead, Green Buildings, Edge Green Building Market Transformation Program, Climate Business Department, IFC. He leads the South Asia Green Building Program for IFC, which aims to mainstream construction of resource-efficient buildings through targeted investments, setting of market standards, and government policies. He has supported mandatory green building codes for 7 national and local governments. A trained architect and building sustainability expert, Atif has worked with Johnson Controls in USA as an energy program manager. We now have a small presentation from Atif. Over to you, Atif.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and just go quickly through our journey. For those who may not be familiar, IFC, which stands for International Finance Corporation, is part of the World Bank Group, which is commonly known as the World Bank. And despite the name, we are just not a lending agency. We just don't give money. We are also providing a lot of technical support and policy support on a very large variety of sectors and projects. IFC is one of the 4 or 5 main wings of the World Bank Group, which deals primarily with the private sector. So our task within IFC is to ensure that there is shared prosperity, meaning there is economic growth and that is being shared by everyone, and therefore we are able to reduce poverty. Now, one of the challenges to that has been climate change in the last few years, or last few decades rather. We've seen the drastic changes in temperatures, in the need for air conditioning, in the need for clean water supply, and a lot of other issues that come along with it. In order to tackle that, we were looking at different solutions. And we found that the building sector actually provides one of the most cost-effective solutions. because once you build a building, it's there for 30, 40, 50, whatever the life of that building is. And if you build in the right efficiencies in that building, they're going to remain throughout the life of that building. And if you make it in such a way that it can be improved, it allows that those retrofits improvements over the life, then you make it even better and be ready and be ready, more resilient to future changes. So with that in mind, we started a program a few years ago, and we found that when we talk about buildings, housing is the biggest demand in terms of buildings. Of course, there are commercial buildings being built, but they're outnumbered when you look at the total housing needs, especially because in developing countries like India, the huge percentage of the population that's moving every year to our cities. And when they come to the cities, they have to be housed. We have to provide homes for them, plus other buildings as well. When we have this massive demand for housing, there is obviously going to be a climate impact as well in constructing those buildings, because when you construct a building, you're obviously getting the material from somewhere. That involves a lot of energy, that involves some kind of an environmental impact. For example, if you're making bricks, you are digging into the soil, taking out topsoil, burning it, that causes pollution, that uses energy, that causes greenhouse gas emission. You're transporting it, constructing it, and then operating the whole building. Every step of the way has an environmental impact. So how can we minimize that environmental impact? That's the focus that we have been having over the last decade or so. But we want this to be a win-win situation for all. If you just say what is the simplest way to make green homes mainstream, somebody might say, oh, ask the government to make a regulation. And they will say every home should be green. Yes, in theory, that can work if the government can enforce it properly and implement it sufficiently, and if people are able to cope with it. Because sometimes these changes can be very drastic and can affect lifestyles, can affect budgets, can affect the whole economy in some way. So we need to find solutions that are market friendly, that can be adapted and adopted by everyone, and has benefit for all stakeholders, the investors, the government, and especially the end users as well. So that's the kind of the challenge that we looked at. Now, in order to overcome the challenge, we started to look at the key areas of focus. One, obviously, that we discussed was government policies. And we did some work on government policies, not so much in India, but in other countries. But the other challenge was the perceived cost of green. A lot of people think green is very costly. And that could be true if you don't design it well in the first place. But if the right planning is there, if the multiple options have been considered, a proper analysis has been done before the decisions are made, then the cost can be significantly lower. And we've seen that across multiple projects. And we'll hopefully hear about some of those projects from our panelists today as well. The third is low demand, which is a genuine challenge because a lot of people still don't understand what green really means. How is it beneficial to us? And the definition of green and the benefit of green, that has to be spread across the market. So these were the three areas that we tried to focus on, and we came up with our approach of working primarily with financial institutions on investments, either direct investments with some green building developers or investments through housing finance companies and local banks to other either developers or even home buyers in terms of mortgages, green mortgages. We also, wherever we get the opportunity, we work on building codes and regulations as well. But the big challenge we had identified was figuring out what really is green. So we came up with this standard called EDGE, which is a global universal standard, which says that your building is green if you are able to make it at least 20% better as compared to your peers. So 20% better in terms of the use of energy, the use of water in that building, and the use of materials. So we've tried to keep it very, very simple and very quantifiable. Each of these metrics can be measured And each of these metrics has a huge impact on a lot of other things. So especially energy has an impact on greenhouse gas emissions, which has an impact on climate change. This definition remains the same for all buildings. The baseline does change. So if you're evaluating a house or an apartment in, let's say, Delhi versus an apartment in Shimla or an apartment in let's say, Kochi, the baseline would be different, but the standard would still remain 20%. So as long as you can meet that 20% threshold, we are considering that to be a green. Now, obviously, there are a lot of other things that you can do besides these three: energy, water, materials. But we felt these are the key areas that require some attention, and the others can kind of follow along. So with that in mind, we've been rolling this out globally. In fact, now we have this spread around the world. And to our knowledge, EDGE is the fastest growing green building certification in the world. Some great examples, like in Colombia, now 20% of all new construction in Colombia is EDGE certified. And we've always kind of hovered towards that 20% target because we feel once that critical mass is there, rest of the market tends to follow, because then they kind of feel left out. So we've achieved that in Colombia. In India, it's still not there yet, but we are growing very fast. If you look at the next slide here, yeah, in India, again, if you see the growth, it's been drastic growth over the last 2-3 years, despite the pandemic. And we're really happy that a lot of our partners, a lot of our developer partners and investors are really adopting these standards. And we are kind of neutral in that sense. As long as the standard, as long as the rating is validated, we are supportive of all green building standards. But we felt there was a need in the market for a simpler standard that was easy to achieve and easy to understand and quantifiable. So thankfully, a lot of our partners have the same kind of mindset and are adopting this as well. So in fact, a lot of the financial agencies, the international green finance standards that kind of classify what really is green finance, have accepted our standard as a valid criteria for green finance. So that means if you have an EDGE certification, then you can qualify for some of these green finance definitions and maybe get green finance through them or through the others who are using their standard. We've had numerous good examples, ranging from warehouses to affordable houses, which again was a category that typically was not going for green. And now we are even going into other sectors. So I won't go into a lot of details on these. The EDGE standard, we've also tweaked slightly in the last few years to recognize buildings that are going beyond the minimum standard of 20%. So if you go to 40% of energy saving, then you qualify for an EDGE advanced certification. And we also realize that a lot of governments now are trying to move their economies towards a zero carbon economy, including India. So the Prime Minister has made a declaration at the COP26 that by 2070, India would be zero carbon. So buildings would be a huge component of that. So with that in mind, we've also introduced the zero carbon certification, which looks at actual consumption of building, actual consumption of energy in the building versus the renewable energy that could be used to kind of balance that out. So you need to reduce your energy consumption by at least 40%, and then the remaining energy should be renewable. Only then you would get the zero carbon after 1 year of operation. So we've got some good examples here. I'll just very quickly flip through this. I won't go into the examples. So this is a signature project, which I'm sure Raviji will be talking about. It's a great example of what can be achieved even for an affordable housing project. It's an excellent example of how green design can be incorporated right from the beginning of the design process. And I'm sure he'll talk about the cost impact of the green design as well. I'd love to hear that. But they've managed to reduce energy consumption by 23%, water consumption by 39%, and material consumption by 52%. Material consumption is measured through measurement of the embodied energy of construction material, how it's manufactured. So that's actually excellent performance for this project. Shapurji project, which again got pretty significant savings. And if you look at the number, so even with very simple measures, you can look at the list of measures, they were able to achieve this. So the overall cost to the project was minimal, but the impact would last for generations. And then again, another affordable housing project in Bangalore, Vbhc project. This was one of our first. If you look at it, may not even look green. It looks fairly simple, but it has very well planned strategies in place that help achieve their energy, water, material consumption while keeping the indoor thermal comfort for the occupants. So we do plan to roll it out across India now and work with more and more partners. We feel this is something that can open doors to green finance, and we'll hope Sanjay ji will talk something about that as well. And also we are working on an awareness campaign, so more and more people understand the value of green and are attracted to buy it, so there is higher demand for it. So I'll stop there, and then we'll go into a round of questions to our panelists. I talked a little bit about our definition of green, but I like to ask this question to our panelists, maybe starting with Sanjay ji. What does green housing really mean to you?
Thank you, Atif, for the wonderful start to the meeting. As you mentioned, the biggest challenge today is the climate change. I think it is as important as the GDP for a country. I think everybody is focusing. If you look at greenhousing for me, I would say, if you look at from the user angle, no, I'm not a developer, so it's probably, I will not talk about that. But if you use user angle, I would say that greenhousing is not something to be built. I think I would rather focus whether you are able to maintain those buildings, because effective benefit of the building will come only if it is maintained well. Builders may be doing very well during the execution, but if the same message is not conveyed to the user, it doesn't help them, right? Now, if you look at the green buildings, there are two components. One is residential and one is commercial. As you mentioned, that commercial generally are green because they are owned by the people who have an interest in those buildings. But in case of residential building, the builder interest is there as long as the building is not sold. Once the building is sold, it has to be maintained by those people. So I think something has to be looked at. What can we do to maintain those buildings on a longer run? Right? The second, I would say that the regulation. I think today the green housing is all self-regulation. I think it is left to the developer whether they choose to build and don't choose to build. And today, I find all the big developers are very keen to participate in doing it. All. It is, but they are not the entire fraternity of the construction industry. I think the big developers could be constructing, say maybe 25% of the total unit, but there are smaller developers who are also building, and they are not familiar with the benefits and the end result of green building. I think that's something is the other gap. And third, I would say, I think it is a need of the hour. The issues we are facing, whether abnormal temperature, abnormal weather condition. And if you look at very simple example, 2 years back of COVID, when it was COVID, when there was no construction industry, when there was no automobile on the road, we could see blue sky in the air. We had never seen blue sky in Delhi for last many, many years, but you could see stars in the night, blue sky, the pollution, even the temperatures were down. Even the residential temperatures were down in Delhi. We did not use AC till April. Only in May we started using, and it was pretty good. So I think that is the weather. I think what we need probably is, I think we have to go back to the drawing boards and start thinking about how to make it, right? Everybody and all the developers know it, but it is the user who have to take the note of this building and the need for it.
Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah, Barun, please.
Atif, it's been wonderfully explained by Sanjay. But one more thing that I'm trying to see is we all see green building as an energy efficient building. What I'm also trying to discuss when we talk to the clients is energy building is also a healthy environment building. So the moment health aspect is added to the green building, rather than just being the energy efficient building, the whole parameter of how a person look at green buildings changes. So I've been doing this in a lot of places where right from the perception of discussion, I try to move it towards a healthier building, to a healthier living environment, which is a better living environment, rather than just trying to say it's a cost-effective living environment.
Thanks, Varun. Ashwinderji.
Thank you, Atif. Very lovely introduction. Thanks to you and Jayashree. I think more discussions like this is what is the need of the hour, because whatever get discussed gets tracked, and what gets tracked gets delivered. I love the way Sanjay ji kind of explained his concept during the COVID times. I belong to Chandigarh, and Chandigarh, every house, 40% is open. And it is one of the cities that has the lowest level of pollution. And we all know that the most developed countries are the highest consumers of energy, and that is where these concepts have to be brought in, because development has its own issues. I was going through a study which said that any green building, if you have employees working in a green building, and for a simplistic answer, if that office has good sunlight coming in and artificial lights are not being used in that office, the employee productivity in that office is 15% higher at a measurable number. The stress levels are low because there is an adequate vitamin D absorption that the employees do without even getting to know about it. So that is how important green building is to me. And I think Varun also touched upon health. But there are certain measurable things that have happened. Our aim is to reduce energy costs, because yes, energy costs will get reduced. You made a very valid point we don't need to look at the immediate cost, but we need to look at the cost that is saved over the life cycle of the project or the asset. So if we look at it, I think the benefits of having a green building and what it means is far more simpler than what it is being made out of.
Thank you, Ashwinderji. Raviji, over to you. Your thoughts on what does green housing mean to you and to Signature?
In my perspective, actually, firstly, we need to see what the kind of environment we want to give to our next generation. Not just us, but the next generation. What kind of environment we want to give to them. When we are talking about green building, it's a matter of carbon emission, energy saving, many more things, healthier living, many things. What kind of environment we want to give to the next generation, we must be, when the next generation will come, they will hold us responsible for this carbon emission. And we must follow this green building kind of things in such a responsible manner. I rather say it's a responsible housing, the responsible development. There, the urban housing demand is very huge. We need to provide the home to the persons who don't have any home, but with a sustainable development. I think so. This is the core. And secondly, I think so. I second Mr. Ashwinderji and Varun Chaudhary also. We want to communicate to the customer what is the benefit of the green housing. The customer wanted. After the COVID wave, everybody understood the value of the healthy living. They've understood what is the meaning of the health. I think so. This is the right time when you can communicate with the customer. This is for the beneficial for you, just not the money. It's a beneficial for the next generation. I think so we need to understand in that perspective. And we as Signature Global very much focused about this thing. As a developer, as a person who can be answerable to the next generation, we as a whole should answer to the next generation. We must follow the green housing.
Thanks, Raviji. So what I get from this is you've all highlighted some very important points, that it's not just the construction and design, but also the operation that needs to be considered. And I believe actually it is kind of linked. If you design it well, if you build it well, then your operation would also be less. Your maintenance would be less. it would be easier to operate it in an efficient manner for a longer period of time, and putting less burden on the nature. So meaning not polluting as much, not extracting as much from the nature as we typically do, but trying to rely on natural sources like daylight, wind, etc., to keep our houses cool and comfortable and lighted, well lit as well. And the overall benefits that some of you have highlighted, cost obviously is there. In a housing, it may not be as important as in a commercial building, because we may not even be talking about air conditioning in many of the houses. And even if it is, it may be running only for like 8 hours a day or even less. But there are some cost benefits. And if the tariffs go up in the coming years, that would bite our customers even more. So cost does remain a factor, but I think as many of you pointed out, health and productivity and comfort, those are probably the biggest drivers or the biggest benefits that green homes can provide. And of course, the overall global citizenship that Raviji pointed out as well. So great points. Let me just kind of move to the next logical step beyond this. If green homes are so great, are you really seeing the demand for green homes from your customers, your investors? And maybe I'll start with Barun. Are you seeing any demand for green building, green homes from your customers?
Yes, Atif. I think if I track last 10 years, I think there was a stage, let's say, when the green building was more like on paper and more like it is good to have. So from there, I think today it has moved on where the consciousness has come. There has been a significant rise in the consciousness and understanding of a green building. And at least in the last 3 to 4 years, where I found that whether it is housing or whether it is commercial building, and surprisingly, the industrial building are having a huge demand, just not from the perspective of funding and all that, but from the requirements to, the requirements that they want to deliver a green building. So which is very good. That means the consciousness has crept up. And for us, I think that has helped us to make our construction working system, because what happens is when the demand of a particular type of construction comes up, my skill set of people in our industry also needs to be changed. So I think there has been a constant upgradation of understanding the codes in our team also, because it goes beyond this, because with client interaction, it has happened. Particularly in the project, one of that in your presentation was, the Shapoorji Palaji Calcutta project. So I was heading that project, and it was design and build. So as we were doing it, right from our OEM vendors, right from the lowest sub vendor category, everybody has to get integrated into a system. So which I think has become more obvious, because 10 years down the line, I could not find an OEM vendor, who is able to integrate the system. But today, it's so much that it is getting easier to deliver. Since it is getting easier to deliver, I understand the demand is getting more from every aspect of the requirement from the client side, which is a very good indication.
Great. That's very encouraging to hear. Maybe I'll ask Ashwinder if you are getting similar vibes from the market as well.
Let me give a twist to this. We keep on saying at Bhartiya City, for example, our integrated township has offices, residences, hotel, entertainment, mall, school. Now, what happens is a lot of people now during COVID have started wanting to move to integrated townships, and we have around 30% as open spaces. Now, what does an integrated township do to the environment is that you walk to work or you cycle to work, you walk to a hotel, your child walks to school, and you walk to a mall. So your energy consumption automatically goes down, and that is why there is a huge pent-up demand in India today, Atif, in the housing sector, in the residential space. And I was doing one research which says that every 1 out of 6 customers who is planning to buy a house, especially the first-time buyer, wants to spend extra on the house, but wants to get into an integrated township where he doesn't have to drive a car or go through the pollution of the world. Another thing that I just studied, which is that in the US, we don't have such data, and maybe reputed organizations and professionals like you, Atif, will provide us over a period of time, and maybe you have and I have not gone through it, is that the rentals of green buildings are higher than normal buildings because people prefer to be in green buildings. The other assessment that we have done as a developer is that if I spend $1 more on the mitigation activities, such as strengthening buildings and improving drainages, my saving is around $6 in terms of the response and recovery cost. Because what happens is, if you don't spend time on design initially, and Barun would be an expert in that, the amount of money spent by a developer in doing repairs and the other cost is so high that the developer itself is figuring out that it is better to get into shape from day one, like what Signature Global did and the example that you gave. So customers are definitely appreciating it if it is communicated properly to them, and definitely the upwardly mobile, the cities like Bangalore, because it is a Silicon Valley of India, the segment is such, people understand now. They are very keen to know what is outside the house as much as what is inside the house.
Great. Thanks, Ashwinder. Raviji, a question for you, because I know that we've been working with you and your team for quite a while, and Signature Global has already committed to most of the upcoming portfolio to be green certified. Why did you or the organization take that decision? Was it based on customer demand, or was it an internally driven decision?
As I said earlier in my first comment, we as Signature Global believe in the sustainable development. We as internally, we also committed that we should go majority for the greenhouse, because as developer, we should be held responsible for the kind of development. The environment should not be harmed. It should be less, the lesser the possible, but still fulfilling the demand of the customers. Secondly, yes, first we took the decision for the green building when we marketed the product and communicated to the customers. Yes, it's a green building. Customers accepted it very well. They have taken hands-on on it. Even the project which you are discussing in the green project, the Park 3, that is the Sona project, the Park 3, this is 100% sold out right now. Means the response of the customer, if the communication is clear, if we can communicate the benefits of the greenhousing to the customer, how it is beneficial for him, and it doesn't cost much more than the normal house, then the customers are quite receptive to that. Secondly, I think so, Sanjay ji is also here. If we can add such kind of some small kind of benefits to the customer in home loan, special percentage for the green homes, then the customers will come in front and ask for the green homes, because till the time the developers are doing, they are marketing it. But if the practical thought process can be generated, some kind of home loan benefits can be given, some kind of subsidy interest can be given to them, then the customers will come in front of to the developers, develop green housing, we want to take it. Secondly, I think so for the resale benefit, I think so for the green homes, it will be much resale benefit will be there, because the cost of maintenance for the home, the energy saving is there, about 20% energy saving is there. Then the resale value of those homes will be much better if we be able to communicate to the customers that kind of thing. I think so customers will take its hands on. And thirdly, I think so on the government side, I think so if we can ask to the government, if they can reduce such kind of stamp duty or the limited kind of house tax on green homes, because as Ashwinder said, the green homes, there is a minimum, a kind of infrastructure where they produce the lesser negative produce or the environment lesser wastage, then it will be beneficial for the MCG authorities or like the municipal authorities. It will be beneficial for them if they can reduce the house tax over those kind of units. Then these kind of practical aspects can be taken. The customer will come from front. We want to take the green housing, the affordable. Developers are bound to develop that green housing.
Thanks, Raviji. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that it was kind of a confluence of your own kind of a risk taking, I would say, or initiative to go with this, keeping in mind that this is the right thing to do, and then the messaging that would attract the customers to it. And you're saying that there might be other external factors like government incentives and subsidies that might be helpful in taking this even further. I think there was an important point here that Raviji highlighted, is that they've decided to go for almost the entire portfolio to be green. We've seen some of the other major developers also doing that globally. They're saying this is the path we want to go. We want to make this mainstream for us. Just want to understand from our other participants here, do you foresee that for your organization as well? Maybe Ashwandarji, if you want to start.
Certainly, Atif, there are a lot of discussions that are internally happening, and I am very keen that majority of our projects in future, especially residential, because I want to bring focus on the residential, because green gets associated a lot with the commercial side of the world, which is only maybe 15%, and 85%, 80 to 85% is residential. And with my responsibility, I think we need to bring that focus. We are internally quite motivated to follow this path, and I'm going to kind of touch base with you separately in terms of taking your advice and how you and Raviji have worked together, and so that we can take use of the learnings that are there and make this process much more smoother and streamlined. Because somewhere I feel that the communication around this, the perception is this is some rocket launching thing, and it's something which is very complicated. But the more I interact, and I will separately have conversations with Raviji also, is that this is the way forward, and there is a huge requirement that is there from a customer's perspective. The customer is going to get educated, the customer is getting smarter, and if they find huge, not just economic, but health benefits, because see, India is obsessed about three things, educating their children, getting them married, and then finally seeing your children buy their own home. So Indian parent is only bothered about these three things. And the moment the child has been educated, married, and finally bought their own home, I think वो कहते हैं ना गंगा नहा लेते हैं वो. So I think it is important, very important, and I want to take a leaf from what Raviji is doing. We are very keen to do it, and we will definitely implement it and take it forward with some good learnings that you have, so that our process becomes maybe smoother and faster, and we also then become an example for others to follow.
Thanks. That's very heartening to hear, Ashwinarji, and we'll be glad to support you in any way we can. Barun, I know you're kind of a contractor as well, which is often guided by a developer, promoter, investor, but as an organization, has Ashoka Buildcon also set up some sustainability targets of its own?
Atif, actually, I found that, green building was always driven by either the promoters or the financial part of it. So slowly, I thought, why not as a organization, we take it as a standard of doing something which doesn't need anything special, as Ashwinder saying, it's not a rocket science. So there are certain good practices which can be incorporated and made a good practice in construction itself, by the way, even if it is not a certified green building, but I'm taking all the good practices of a green building, which doesn't let me have extra cost. For example, we are in our HSE policies, we have found that if I have a better, less pollution on site, the productivity of my 2000 to 3000 labor is much higher. So why not I have follow a better policy of having less pollution on site? So this was one. Bio toilets, we have started doing it. So I'm encouraging healthier well-being for my staff at site for next 3 years, because that is also should be seen how it is impacting. A green building is impacting those 3,000 staff who are working during the construction time. So having to understand that without doing much, I am having a better working environment for those people, because that's their working environment. So I'm happy to say, as a contractor, we are eyeing on those areas. Then preserving a topsoil is very standard. Why should I, do whole of the excavation and waste the topsoil? This has nothing to do coming from my client. It is, as a good practice, we try to have the 20% topsoil, which is, very important. Keep it aside, get it back during the landscaping and other part. Similarly, we do a lot of design build, end-to-end solutions. So they're having a daylight design, making sure that the daylight design is daylight is taken into, incorporated to every aspect of the design is very important. So those kind of things, even if I have to go for, let's say, STP in my project, so I will always go for MBBA here, because that's the area I think we do. One more thing we have started promoting with our developer is, I find paint is one of the areas which usually we do a paint and complete an apartment. And after that, during the handover stage, all the clients individually repaint their whole areas with the paints again. And paint is one of the areas which have a lot of toxins, and we can save. So what I am promoting to my client is, don't paint. If it is having a good finish, don't paint it. Let the client choose their paint and do it, because usually it's very personal, the touch of the paint. So we have reduced another way of step into that process. So these are various things that, as a contractor, without really impacting the cost, without really impacting the requirement of the developer, we have done it as a practice, and which we are promoting and we are discussing as a design and build contractor to our clients. So that's an effort we have started doing.
Thanks, Varun. And I think that's a great example of the paint that you gave. That often some of the best solutions are the simplest ones and the cheapest ones.
Yes.
Just not painting, that's saving you money, and that's saving environment as well, and that's still meeting the customer's demand. So I think that's a great example that you gave. In fact, I'm reminded of a statement somebody made that a few years ago. So if you went to an electronics store 20 years ago, you would have to say, I want to buy a color TV. Now, when you go, you don't say color, you just say, I want to buy a TV, because every TV is color. So similarly, hopefully we can have that for buildings as well. When somebody is coming to buy a building or rent a building or get a building built,
very good example.
You shouldn't have to say that.
Very good example.
So that's what we are hoping, that this becomes mainstream.
No,
that,
Atif,
yes, Sanjay.
I'll just add on to what you said, but I think it's a long way. Though yes, the larger developers are actively working very, very consciously. But if you look at what's happening, because I can just talk about the numbers we have. Still, a penetration to the green housing for us retail, because we are the largest financing, still is very, very low. It's about only 3.5% to 4% of the monthly disbursement we do goes into green. Okay. Now, if you look at the customer, when you talk about the customer demand, I think first the biggest misconception which we have to remove from the developer's mind, the developers were large, whether it's Ravinder or Ravi or Varun or even Shapoji, they know that the cost is manageable, right? But the misconception about the customer is, number one, they're not aware that what are the benefits. That's something we don't have to only talk about green building, because builder gets benefit. Okay, customers don't get direct benefits; they get intangible benefits. So tangible benefits are not very clear. First is we have to market the product. We have to market the product that there are benefits to him. A lot of things are said and noted. We are not marketing that. I think I have met some of the developers and I've seen the customers. See what they're just using that the green certificate on the wall. They are not conveying to the customer that this is a green project, and if you take that, these are the indirect benefits to you. That's something. Customers are not aware, and customer will always look at for, if I have to buy this, what is there for me? I think the mindset of those people also have to change, that what is there for me to what is there for the environment. I think that is the big change we will need to do it. Once they know it, and now today when you talk that everybody would look for green housing, I think that situation is very far, for the simple reason, it is a self-regulated green building system today. I think If Raviji wants to do it, he will do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he need not do it. He is very conscious with it. I think regulation will have to come. Unless regulation comes, it will not be possible for the industry to work together and bring this. Look at the affordable housing. Affordable housing is being talked for the last 20 years, right? But it never picked up what it has been picked up in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Why? Because RBI clearly defined the guidelines for affordable housing. Government clearly mandated that this is that. Government clearly said now these projects will have to be affordable housing in terms of area. I think similarly now, though you're saying that we should not be pushing, but I think we should be pushing that green housing, affordable housing should be, I think, replaced with green affordable housing. I think it should be made mandatory for the projects to be approved. Because if you look at Dubai, if you look at Singapore, I think every building is made mandatory as a green. You don't have an option. I think that option has to get away since there are benefits to developer. There is no reason why they should not do it. The cost is simple because cost is not expensive and you have been working on it. So there is no reason for not to do it. I think it is just that it is an option given to them. So they are not opting that. I think this is one. If you look at, other thing I would say, yes, we are talking about green building. I think we should not limit this only to the developer project. I think the large portion of the construction is coming in the retail self-construction. The huge tier 2, tier 3, and in the small developer, they don't build the township. I think it has to be passed on to that message has to go there. I think huge awareness programs are needed to educate people. Even probably from the developer side, I think education series will have to be required when they hand over the project to AOA or Resident Welfare Association, that what you have to manage, because if they don't maintain, as I said in the beginning, entire objective is defeated.
Atif, just one thing I want to ask you, you being a super subject matter expert in this, what would be the one biggest impediment for a developer not to opt for a green building?
So in my understanding, so I'm not a developer, but in my understanding, the biggest impediment is the perceived lack of demand. And I would say perceived because sometimes there is demand, but maybe they're not putting it in those words. People might say, "Hame acha ghar chahiye." But what does acha mean? That might include a comfortable house. It might include a house that doesn't cause me to spend thousands of rupees every month on my electricity bills. And there might be other health benefits, but not everybody stating in the same language. So maybe it's that maybe that message is not being heard everywhere and the developers feel there is no demand. But as I'm hearing from many of us here that there is increasing demand. So that's good to know. Sanjay ji, you saying?
No, I just want to say yes. I think see today when a consumer comes, I think first thing he looks at it is I'm paying anything more for this kind of a building. So I think that conception has to go, probably no. The second is, are you going to save something more than what you would have saved in normal building? Even if it is electricity bill and even if I have to save 500 rupees per month lesser to this, I think somewhere we have to measure and convey to the customer that there is a end saving. And today people won't mind if I'm getting the same property, which is healthier. So that may be intangible, but I think we have to convey that these are the benefits, both tangible and intangible, and also that we are not charging premium, but I'm giving the same kind of specification and a better life within the same cost.
There is a very interesting question. How climatic challenges can be taken up in green building in environmentally sensitive areas and type of construction material to be used?
So I'll get to that question and maybe I'll ask our panelists to pitch in as well. But let me just first respond to what Sanjay ji had raised a very interesting point about marketing awareness and also about self-built housing. So I have two examples to share here. So IFC has been working in Vietnam as well. One of the developers there called Capital House, they got convinced, the CEO got convinced that there is definite value in making our apartments more affordable and more green as well. But he realized the same challenges that we're talking about, lack of awareness, lack of understanding of the benefits. So he put aside a vast amount of funds just to market the benefits. And I clearly remember one of the open houses that he conducted for the prospective buyers. We helped him set up that open house and highlighted the individual benefits that they would get out of it. The customers and homeowners would get out of living in those houses. And just that marketing effort, that open house resulted in increase sale by 3 times, like the time was reduced by 3 times. So they were able to sell it much faster than they would have otherwise sold. So that's a very clear, tangible benefit that the developer got out in that case. He spent something, but I think the benefit was even bigger than what he spent. The other example is on the self-built housing. So we are doing a project with a housing finance company in India. We just started, it's in early stages, and they are looking at self-built housing. And so I went in to their customers in semi-rural areas. Many of them don't understand what greenhouse means. But I said, is your house, firstly, does in your existing house, so these houses were not built yet. So I said, in your existing house, do you feel very hot in extreme summers and very cold in extreme winters? I said, yes, we do. And our children suffer, and sometimes my father gets sick, and so on and so forth. So we said, what if you get a house that doesn't have those problems? He said, yeah, that's excellent. Secondly, what if you're currently facing electricity cuts? Yeah, sometimes your water supply is not good. What if you get a house where even with electricity cuts, even with reduced water supply, you're able to manage for longer? So you don't have to buy a tanker every week. Maybe you can buy in 10 days or 2 weeks. They said, yeah, we would love that. And then thirdly is on cost. What if your electricity bill comes down by 15, 20%? I said, yeah, we would love that too. So we said, that's the house that we are proposing you to take. This is the additional cost to it. And again, the additional cost that we calculated for those houses to be green was not more than 20,000 in most cases. 20,000 rupees to make these are not huge houses like LIG and MIG and sometimes even EW's houses. So approximately 20,000 rupees to make a house green with some very simple measures. And the bank is willing to give you that loan, that extra amount in your loan. I said, yeah, why not? That's a win-win situation for us and for the bank too. So I would say 90% of the people that we spoke with in that visit said yes. So I think it's the kind of messaging we need to figure out. Now, that was a completely different audience. The audience, the buyers may be very different from some of our developers here and in the audience. So I strongly feel the messaging has to be right. Now, maybe I'll ask the question that has been asked by our audience member. If anybody wants to respond to that, I feel they're talking about what kind of construction materials, how do you choose construction materials in environmentally sensitive areas?
See, I think it is not just about environmental sensitive areas. You know, the construction material that you're going to choose in Shimla, which is in hills, and the construction material that you have to choose in Goa, which is on the sea, and even for that matter, anywhere, whether you are in Maharashtra or you are in Gujarat. One of the things that green buildings is going to force us is to utilize the materials which are near us and make the most of it, because you still save a lot of money on transportation, and you know, as you were talking about it, Atif, that there are ancillary costs involved when the emissions are not just while construction. The emissions are when you are making brick, when you're making cement, when you're making steel. You know, 22% of the total carbon emissions come from the construction sector, and within construction sector, you know, so I think I would not have a direct answer, but see, when you are constructing something in the hills, there is a lot of transportation that is happening from you know, the plains to the hills, and that is why the cost of construction is very high. So we have to figure out a way that, you know, do we move to making certain, you know, apartments which are biodegradable but strong, made of wood in the hills, and not getting that cement and steel and corrupting that entire environment. If you go to Simla today and what it was 30 years back, it is completely destroyed, because just to save some wood, the wood also got cut because you needed larger infrastructures, roads, and it is one of the most polluted hill stations of the country, which was at one time the best. So I think it will depend from city to city, state to state. But yes, the choice of material has to be what is near you so that you reduce the transportation of that. And a lot of related costs and energy get saved.
Atif, I also think while we talk of green building, we just to answer, this question also, we always talk of materials as Ashwinder is saying. Another way of to look at this is there some technologies which are available which can be really helping us to make things better, like water, as we have been discussing, is one of the most important resources and the depleting condition of water. So are there technologies which can promote zero water during construction? So this is one of the areas where we are now trying to promote in smaller scale housing or smaller, border areas, something which we call light gauge steel structures. This whole thing can be done in 1/3 the time of a conventional way. It doesn't need cement. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need a lot of steel. It doesn't need bricks. So, and also, because it has a void inside, there is a natural thermal insulation provided in LGS structures. So we also need to come out of the thought process of one is materials, what we take, but also we might have to promote newer technologies, which are, helping us to really preserve our resources like water and becomes a natural environment for green building, just because of some of the aspects that can happen. One more example of this technology, light gauge steel, it not only takes no water during construction, also it doesn't need any equipment during construction because it doesn't need mixtures, it doesn't need concrete. So you are saving on all the mechanization that is required to construct. So there are a lot of researches and a lot of thought process has to go into it, and also acceptance by the client has to come up. So while we are trying to educate people, we have to also educate people. It doesn't mean that concrete is only the strength, because an LGS structure is also 50 years life. So maybe how we should look at it is, multi-pronged thought process where we attack on technologies also.
So if I sum it up, I think what we're saying is local material, but local just by itself may not be sufficient because it could be local but very dirty and destructive, like bricks. So even if you're producing bricks on site, but you're burning it to make the brick, you are producing a lot of smoke and pollution. So local, and secondly, less destructive material, meaning it's not harming the environment in any way, and less toxic for future use as well. So it's not emitting toxins inside the homes. And thirdly, let's look at alternate technologies, which are faster to build and as sturdy as average technology or average material that we've been using. So precast obviously is one of those that many developers are now using. And I am sure it saves cost and it also saves embodied energy as well. Let me kind of ask one summarizing question to the developers, and then Sanjay ji, I have a few questions for you as an investor. But for Ashwinder ji, Ravi ji, and Barun, the question is the green homes making business case for you now? Is it a profitable business for you now? And if not, then what needs to change? Ashwinder, please start, please.
So I never thought profit is an issue, Atif. If you ask me, it has always been something to do with inertia. Most of the homes are bought on home loans. Today, you get 90% home loan if you're a good salaried employee. The rate of interest are at all-time low at 6.5%. Your own example where the cost increase was only 20,000, if I have to put it on percentage, I am assuming that the cost increase per apartment is 5%. And with a home loan rate and a 20-year home loan, your EMI does not change by another 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees. As it is, the current residential sector is seeing a huge demand from smaller homes to larger homes after COVID. People are utilizing People are taking, even the millennials have decided that having a home is the most important thing, because we are spending most of the time at home, and it has to be a healthy home. It has to do more with the communication and the benefit. If you look at any FMCG product, it is all about communication, communication, communication. I think there has been less communication around the housing sector and more. See, why did the commercial sector move to green housing? Because the tenant or the client wanted green housing, because it is a B2B business. But finally, a home buyer needs a very good home. And after COVID, this is now an important aspect, which is healthy living inside the home, outside the home, between corridors, etc., etc. If we communicate well, cost is never going to be a problem, and profitability is never going to be a problem in moving from a regular home to a green housing home. It is more about positioning the product and providing that product to the customer, because the customer is, as it is moved from affordable, from a 50 lakh budget to a 70 lakh budget in Bangalore, because they want one extra room for work from home. So this is how quickly people can move. They can pay another 5 lakhs. It is about value for money, as it is for any other product. If you can show the value for money in green housing, which hasn't been consumerized. Green housing has to be consumerized, because 75% is residential in the real estate world. If we consumerize it as stakeholders, as developers, as channel partners, as financial institutions, I am 100% sure that the demand will far outgrow the supply, because people will say, I want to get into a home which is more sustainable and gives me a better quality of life and reduces my operating cost. That's the way I look at it.
Ashwinderji, just to a follow-up question there. So is your organization already kind of doing that kind of communication or planning to do that?
Absolutely, Atilji. I would actually invite you to come and visit us at Bharatiya City. You'll be surprised the way the city has been built. I would actually invite Sanjay ji, Ravi ji, Barun, everybody to come and visit. There has been a tremendous focus on livability aspect, and we are a key proponent that communication is what differentiates a good design from a bad design, because a good design badly communicated is worse than a bad design better communicated. And green building is a requirement. Actually, you know what Sanjay ji was saying, even if he's saying the government should mandate it, I think the consumer is going to mandate it if organizations like yours kind of talk about it more and more, and you have such a great certification like Edge, which is very simple to follow. You know, my life is actually becoming easier, because I didn't know Edge is just about these 3 parameters where you are 20% better. So you are making my execution easier, and a platform where I can compare what I deliver and what I get. So I think the consumer is going to demand for green building the moment they understand this is what green building means. Today, green building looks like a very complicated, word, which can only be known by architects, engineers, and people in the industry. But tomorrow, if our kids know that green building means sustainable living, you're contributing to the environment, you are having a good air to breathe, we are using better energy, more efficient energy, I think things are going to be much better. We are all from middle class. I remember I'm an army officer's son. I could never move from one room to the other room without switching off the light and the fan, which the new age generation kids don't do. So there are a lot of things which we were already doing, which we have forgotten, and we need to bring it to the table now.
So do you think we need an Amitabh Bachchan to do an ad on television about green homes like he did for polio drops and all?
Absolutely. I think we need an Amitabh Bachchan or a Sachin Tendulkar or somebody as big. It's a very pertinent question. Today we are zero on polio, because it was not just Amitabh Bachchan, it was the sustainability of the ad campaign that happened for multiple number of years. Today, when we talk about green building, Atif ji, the problem is once the building is certified as green, there are no audits taking place, and that is what is the problem. So you don't know whether that audit is happening on an annual basis. You have financial statements get audited. Your processes get audited. SEBI has as a regulator is auditing it. Maybe RERA needs to get in a green building auditor who, if you are a RERA certified developer, today you can't launch a product without a RERA number, right, Ravi ji? RERA ke bina to hum launch karte nahi hai kuch bhi. Similarly, RERA filing has to say that, we will audit every year. We will get audited every year for a green building. You don't need to create a new regulator for that. The regulator is already there. The regulator needs to be given another important area so that whatever is green, at least that is green. The problem is that we are only 5% green in the total ecosystem built environment. And out of that 5%, we don't know whether actually we are 1% or 2%. So that is also a major issue. So RERA being there, and RERA already spent 5 years, they need to bring an audit environment where IFC and leaders like you can play a key role. That guys, if you are certifying as green, IFC team is going to come, or maybe Edge is going to come and audit you on a regular basis, maybe 2 years, 3 years, so that you can continue to carry the badge of green building.
That's an excellent idea. And I know there are some initiatives that are ongoing in that regard. We've been working with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and we know that they are developing this label. Just like we have the star label for appliances, there is a star label for buildings and homes. Buildings already come up, commercial, but homes is coming up now. So homes could be labeled, and that label could become just like it in Europe. It is a requirement for every financial transaction, whether you're buying a house or renting a house or insuring the house. You have to kind of show that label alongside. But your idea of involving RERA also sounds really interesting. Maybe that's something that
RERA
we should
is a
all
semi-government body. It is not a fully government body. It is generally run by retired IAS officers. I am waiting for the day when people like Ravi Agarwal and Barun Chaudhary or Mr. Sanjay Joshi will be chairmen of RERA, because or Atif being a chairman of RERA, because see, the problem is you are getting in the same kind of people who were earlier in the government, with due respect to everybody. You need some fresh thought process and some kind of disruption in the way RERA is done, because RERA can also be improved so much, making the life of a developer and a financier easy. And Raviji will agree with me how much we have to work to get many things done. So I think there is a lot that can be done. I think India is positioned in a very good way, because at least we have the regulator in place.
Sure.
Atif, I just want to add what Ashwinder said, and I think he quoted very good example of branding green building, like what Polio did. But I think other very important aspect, I think we can look at it, and I think it's the example probably in Singapore. I think the sustainable housing or energy efficient, I think has to be imbibed, even the kids. I think as part of the syllabus, maybe the education level, they should understand how important is the environment and how important the building. I talked about this in one of the sessions with the CII, and that I think it probably some component of this has to come as part of this. It has to be imbibed right from the childhood at the kids, and they're very conscious. Probably they will also look at and demand, as Ashwinder said. The other point is also I had the opportunity to present a perspective to the RERA chiefs. I did a presentation to them, and I brought up this point of the green building, that they should include as part of the RERA somewhere, that they should try and track that how many buildings are being, and what can be done from the RERA side in bringing this as a culture of the industry itself. Yeah, I think that you brought in very good points.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. That's great to hear that RERA knows, at least the current chairman knows.
Yes.
But it would be worth exploring it further. Ravi ji, your thoughts on this issue, and then we'll go over to Sanjay ji for some investor related questions. 2-3 questions.
आतिफ, मैं इसमें थोड़ा सा और पर्सपेक्टिव ऐड करना चाहूँगा. मैं संजय जी की एक बात जो सेल्फ जो बिल्ट हाउसिंग है, उसके अंदर मैं आपको ऐड करना चाहूँगा, क्योंकि एक अपने यहाँ इंडिया में जो हमारी ऑर्गेनाइज डेवलपमेंट है, जो इस तरह से अभी चल रही है, जो डेवलपर्स डेवलप कर रहे हैं, उनमें आज ग्रीन बिल्डिंग के ऊपर कुछ बेनिफिट्स, जैसे हरियाणा में भी, हरियाणा की बिल्डिंग HBC में भी दिए गए हैं, और दूसरे भी जहाँ भी रिस्पेक्टिव जो भी बिल्डिंग कोड्स हैं उनके अंदर दिए गए हैं। जैसे मान लीजिए ग्रुप हाउस की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो करीबन तो एक्स्ट्रा FAR उसके अंदर अगर ग्रुप हाउसिंग करते हैं तो आपको शायद बेटर बेनिफिट उसमें 5% का एक्स्ट्रा FAR मिलता है। तो वहाँ से डेवलपर भी का भी डिसीजन ड्राइव होता है कि यस, कि उनको एक्स्ट्रा FAR मिल रहा है, वो कॉस्ट टू बेनिफिट एनालिसिस भी निकालते हैं, तो कम से कम एटलीस्ट उस लेवल पे वो डिसीजन लेने का प्रयास करते हैं। लेकिन जो लो बिल्ट हाउसिंग है, मतलब कि लो राइज बिल्ट हाउसिंग है, वहाँ पे ऐसा कोई बेनिफिट नहीं, वहाँ पे ऐसा कोई स्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, ना हरियाणा बिल्डिंग कोड में, ना आई थिंक सो, जो मेरी लिमिटेड नॉलेज है हरियाणा बिल्डिंग कोड में एटलीस्ट नहीं। हरियाणा बिल्डिंग कोड में अगर आप लो राइज डेवलपमेंट करते हैं तो वहाँ पे ग्रीन बिल्डिंग का कोई बेनिफिट ऐसा नहीं जो ड्राइव करे। ठीक है, एज अ डेवलपर, as a sustainable living, we can think in the big manner, in the big perspective, environment friendly, lot of things, because we can understand the big things, the carbon emission, a lot of things, and we can communicate to the customer. These are the green homes. But majority of the houses, big percentage of houses are self-built houses. वो बहुत बड़ा परसेंटेज है। आई थिंक सो उसके लिए कोई आपके यहाँ ग्रीन बिल्डिंग के अंदर एक कैटेगराइजेशन अलग से आना चाहिए। हो सकता है, हो, मेरी नॉलेज नहीं है, ठीक है, अलग से आना चाहिए। एक है जो प्रोजेक्ट डेवलप हो रहे हैं, और एक जो सिंपल जो घर हैं वो तो स्टील +4 इस तरह की जो डेवलपमेंट हो रही है, जो लो राइज डेवलपमेंट हो रही है, जो सिंपल अपने घर बनाते हैं, जो खुद घर बना रहे हैं, सेल्फ बिल्ड हाउसिंग बना रहे हैं, उनके लिए कोई ग्रीन बिल्डिंग का आपका छोटा नाम आना चाहिए। तो उसके अंदर कोई गवर्नमेंट को हम रिकमेंडेशन करें कि अगर ग्रीन होम बनाता है विद लिमिटेड फीचर्स, क्योंकि तो अभी एक क्वेश्चन आ रहा था कि या तो सारी चीजें जो ग्रीन की हैं वो पूरी यहाँ तो सेल्फ बिल्ड हाउस में नहीं हो सकती, एग्रीड नहीं हो सकती, बट आपके यहाँ कोई ऐसा रेगुलेशन या ऐसा कोई प्रोविजनिंग, इस तरह की ग्रेडिंग आनी चाहिए कि भी ये ग्रीन होम है, अगर इस अपना स्टेट +4 या 4 इस तरह का बनता है तो उसको भी एक कैटेगराइजेशन सर्टिफिकेट किया जाए, और उसके बेस पे गवर्नमेंट को कहा जाए कि यस, अगर आप ये इसमें कोई बेनिफिट दिया जाए, उससे बेनिफिट मार्क कर दिया गया, तो क्या होगा कि लोग ना जो सेल्फ बिल्ड हाउसिंग है वो सामने से आएंगे कि वी वांट टू गेट दीज होम सर्टिफाइड, और वो घर वो बनाने की तरफ एक जो आम कस्टमर है, जो या आम एक बेसिक जो डेवलपर जो रूटीन डेवलपमेंट करते हैं, अपने खुद के हम घर बनाते हैं, तो उसके अंदर वो, और वो परसेंटेज आई थिंक सो मोर देन 80%, आई थिंक सो माय डाटा मे बी रॉन्ग, बट the majority percentage comes from self built houses.
Absolutely.
तो उस तरह की कोई I think so.
हाँ संजय जी, बिल्कुल नहीं है, that's an excellent thought to bring in here. हमारा भी डेटा यही कहता है कि 60% के आसपास कंस्ट्रक्शन अभी सेल्फ बिल्ट हाउसिंग है, एंड वी हैव स्टार्टेड वर्किंग ऑन इट। HDFC के साथ जो हमने काम शुरू किया उसमें काफी हद तक ये इन्वॉल्व रहेगा, बिकॉज लार्ज परसेंटेज ऑफ HDFC's portfolio is also self-built housing, and the other bank that I mentioned, the other HFC, you're working on similar. And the whole idea is just what you said, trying to simplify the whole thing, make the messaging very clear, and support them financially wherever they need financial support. इसमें government का involvement कहीं नहीं है, लेकिन please संजय जी.
No, I just want to add जो रवि जी ने बोला, I think गवर्नमेंट को तो इन्वॉल्व कहीं ना कहीं होना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज फॉर द सिंपल रीजन, बिकॉज देन थिंग्स बिकम सिंपलर. जस्ट टू गिव एन एग्जांपल, टुडे रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग इज मैंडेटरी फॉर सेल्फ कंस्ट्रक्शन एंड अ डेवलपर प्रोजेक्ट, राइट? आई थिंक बारिंग वन स्टेट इन इंडिया, रेन हार्वेस्टिंग इज ऑल द मल्टी-स्टोरी बिल्डिंग एंड द रेजिडेंशियल हाउसिंग beyond a certain area, beyond 100 square meter, right? But if the government can make it mandatory, the solar system, because as you talked about renewable energy today, if they can make it mandatory that you can go for 1 kilowatt solar plant. Now, the point is today, solar plant costs about 45,000-50,000 rupees per kilowatt. Now, it is more because of the demand. Okay, once everybody starts using, I think cost can come down. The institution are willing to fund then, and the benefits are in large in terms of renewable energy. The government objective itself is to make it, I think, 300 megawatt under the renewable energy. I think somewhere everything can't be done by private sector. The regulator, the policy maker have a big role to play in any implementation, because today when you talk about implementation, policy and the government support is very critical. We can definitely, all can work, but all will have limitation also beyond a limit. And that's what. So I think if these things also are built in self-construction, it will go a big way. As you said, 60% of the housing itself is retail construction. They have a large role to play in making the building green, because that building itself is a green for us.
संजय जी, मेरा सिर्फ एक पॉइंट है जिसके अंदर हमें शायद we don't need government, and one of the reasons maybe Atif is also saying is so that what can be done faster is because 60-70% is independent housing. Today, as I have worked in a mortgage company for 4 years, but you are an expert in this, spending your lifetime in this business. Today putting a solar plant worth 5 to 6 lakhs on an independent house is a project in itself. Number one, why can't the solar plant be inbuilt in the home loan amount? If we want to do it, I would request SDFC to kind of take lead, maybe internally discuss, because we put furnishing in the home loan amount, right? We give some part of the money as furnishing. Maybe add another 5-6 lakhs where we can, because see what happens is for buying a solar plant, there is no other way to buy it other than taking a personal loan or putting your own equity. And then there is another process. But if you see that if somebody can put a solar plant worth 5 lakhs, which gets added to the home cost, buying that becomes very easy. And then that will lead to a lot of energy saving in these independent houses across the country.
Can I answer this? So just to answer this, we have already done this. This product is out. So we are financing all the people, whether you are doing an improvement to an existing house, want to build a solar unit. It need not be a solar plant. Even if you're making energy efficient product, we are willing to fund that or at home loan rates. If you are constructing your house and build a solar as part of the unit, we will do it. If you have a house and you're doing an extension and still want to build a solar or other energy efficient product, even if you want to renovate your rainwater harvesting, even where we are funding that as a home loan, it's a part of the bill. So what you said is already built there as part of the policy.
Yes, maybe it needs to be communicated more. I think this is a very big step.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Atif, I have a point. India is very big as a country, and organized sectors and unorganized sectors you cannot control at the same time. While we are knowing that 60% of your housing is unorganized and at various locations, because I have seen it is very difficult that you manage. Putting a plan but cannot be implementing is a failure. So what I see is it all should be done in stages. Like you have cars in cities cannot be more than 10 years old or 12 years old in Delhi. Then you have not implemented it in villages and district headquarters. As I see, the maximum energy consumptions are in high-rise buildings and the residential buildings in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. So first, as a strategy, it should be first implemented in organized sectors that we are discussing. And when fully implemented, then you should go to the tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, where you will be successfully able to take this decision, implement it, and see a result. Otherwise, it will be more of implementing it altogether and not able to, get the required results out of it.
Very true.
Sure. Thanks, Varun. Sorry, we are running out of time, so
एक चीज मैं और ऐड करना चाहूंगा, प्लीज।
जी रवि जी।
हाँ, संजय जी, तो जो आपने प्रोडक्ट बताया, तो जिसके अंदर सोलर के लिए आप फाइनेंस करते हैं, इट्स अ वंडरफुल स्टेप। इसमें मेरा एक चीज एडिशन करना चाहूंगा कि जैसे आज जब हम होम लोन करते हैं, तो जो प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना की जो सब्सिडी है वो बैंक अरेंज कराता है। ओके, तो बैक टू बैक तो बैंक अरेंज कराता है, तो कस्टमर नीड टू सबमिट द डॉक्यूमेंट्स ओनली। ओके, तो अगर इस तरह का कोई भी सिस्टम जब सोलर के लिए किया जाए, तो सोलर में अगर मान लीजिए 5 से 6 लाख रुपए उस पर्सन के लगते हैं और आप उसको फाइनेंस कर देते हैं, बट स्टिल उसके लिए बहुत कॉस्टली अफेयर है। तो जो गवर्नमेंट सोलर पे सब्सिडी देती है, अगर वो क्रॉस सब्सिडी उसका इनबिल्ट हिस्सा हो जाए, ठीक है, अगर गवर्नमेंट उसके अंदर जितनी भी सब्सिडी अगर सोलर में देती है, आई डोंट नो कितनी देती है, ठीक है, अगर वो हो जाए तो उसके लिए क्या होगा कि भी जो उसका जो इंटरेस्ट बर्डन है वो कम हो जाएगा। क्योंकि अगर मान लीजिए 3 या 4 लाख रुपए सब्सिडी अगर उसमें गवर्नमेंट देती है, तो इससे ओवरऑल सेल्फ बिल्ड हाउसिंग में बहुत बड़ा सोलर का डेवलपमेंट हो जाएगा। और तो लोगों को लगेगा ये 6 लाख रुपए सोलर है, सब्सिडी जो अरेंज कर रही है वो होम लोन कंपनी अरेंज कर रही है, तो वो आराम से 2 लाख रुपए की कॉस्ट में सोलर को अपना इम्प्लीमेंट कर लेंगे और उस पर इंटरेस्ट की कॉस्ट भी 2 लाख रुपए पड़ रही है, 4 लाख रुपए की सब्सिडी आ रही है। मुझे नहीं पता कितनी सब्सिडी है, इफ इट इज अ वर्थवाइल देन यू कैन।
Thanks, Raviji. Thanks for the great ideas. Sanjayji, the last question is for you. In fact, two questions. The question is, after hearing all of this, and obviously with a lot of interaction you've all already been having, do you think this is the time is right now for green mortgages in India? And the second question is, are you seeing momentum for green finance globally? Meaning the global investors, are they demanding, are they looking for greener projects now in your experience?
So first on the demand for green, yes, for the simple reason. If you look at the urbanization, the way the cities are expanding, if you look at the population of India, 2/3 of the population is less than 35 years. And our data suggests that people generally own a house when they're mid 38 or 40. So probably everybody would need a home. So I think there's a huge demand. And at the same time, the construction industry is also a large contributor of the carbon emission. I think it makes much more sense. And I think there is no option for us. I think going forward will be there that we will have to build. I think greenhouses will be must. If you look at from the investor demand, and if you look at the funds from this, I think there's a huge, for two reasons. Number one, I think ESG is almost become a mandatory for the institution. Okay, and all the institutions are very, very conscious, and we as the largest one and very responsible organization are also very conscious of the environment related thing. We would like to promote developers. We'd like to promote such projects where we do it, because back to back, they are our investors globally. Whether you look at IFC, you also focus on that, or you look at EDB, or you look at AFD France, or you look at other projects. I think they are keen to invest in the companies, are keen to participate in the project which are green. I think it's very, very important for us to raise funds, because if they are the market for us, we will be able to raise funds globally and for financing such projects. Now, the biggest challenge today comes here today is the projects are, we are doing subsidized funding for the corporate loans that we are able to do it. But for the retail one, we are working on a thin margin, okay? Unless cost of funds comes down for us, it's a little difficult for us to further do it. Because as Ashwinda said, and as we all know, I think today the interest rates are the rock bottom. In the last 40 years, I think it's not gone down. Marginal, yes, anybody would be happy if we can offer that. It's easier for us to offer on a corporate level right now, but we are looking at retail level, and we will come up with a product where we can offer subsidized rates also for the customers. But I think market is absolutely right for the green financing, and I don't think that there is an option before us. Maybe I think we have to look at what are we going to leave for our future generation. I think as a responsible organization, Raviji started, Ashwinda doing it, Varun doing it. All the big developers we are meeting actually are very, very conscious of green. So they are just not looking at. And I think there will be only green housing maybe 5 years down the line, in my view.
Thank you, Sanjayji, for the very concise and clear answer. I am actually leaving this webinar more hopeful than I was before, because I was expecting that there would be a lot of challenges that would be brought up. But thankfully, there are challenges, but there are solutions as well that most of us have already identified, and some of us are already working on it. First is communication, making sure that we're marketing our product, our green product rightly, building trust, making sure that there is no greenwashing, making sure that there is proper auditing done, like Ashwinder said, educating and spreading awareness down to the school level, and regulation, of course, that is another leg of the stool that we cannot miss. And as Barun said, maybe doing it in stages. And lastly, the green finance aspect of it. So as Sanjayji pointed out, and our experience is showing, there is definitely demand here. And in terms of the international green finance availability, there is a lot more finance available than people think, especially since the Paris Climate Accord. In fact, the global investors are looking for green projects, and sometimes they're not able to find good, validated, trusted green projects to invest in. So I think if we can build that basic infrastructure, it will become much easier for that green finance. And sometimes it comes with better terms also to flow in and support our projects. So I think on that hopeful note, I would like to thank all the esteemed panelists today for sharing your time and your wisdom today. I hope we can all collectively work on some of these ideas that we've discussed and involve the other industry players as well and make a change towards a positive side. So thank you again and hope to be in touch with you again. I'll hand it back to Jayashree and for the concluding remarks.
Thank you so much. We heard today so much about the advantages of living in green buildings. All stakeholders need to get involved. There needs to be a voluntary inclination to build as green as possible, and it is a conscientiousness act. Each of the gentlemen, right from Ashwinder to Barun to Ravi and Sanjay, had excellent inputs to offer. Atif had some right pointed questions, and that got out the best. As a magazine, we hope to promote this cause, considering that housing for all needs to be made necessary if we are to move from developing to developed nation. Of course, we have a long way to go, but what we heard today had much eye-opening material. Thank you, gentlemen, and we look forward to meeting you again. Thank you, our dear audience, and we hope you'll continue to stay tuned to some of the insightful activities that we are known for doing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Have a good
everyone.
day.